some young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you remember nothing else, you gotta be relentless.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, misery bots of all ages, back again with another video. This time, I kind of want to talk about optimization, particularly optimization on the Steam Deck, because it makes a big difference if Valve can somehow get some sort of support from these devs to optimize their games on the Steam Deck. Now, I also want to talk about how optimization for the Nintendo Switch 2, which will undoubtedly get optimization for their device. These developers will optimize their games for the Nintendo Switch. And if that optimization on the Nintendo Switch would aid in the Steam Deck's longevity, at least the Steam Deck's 1 longevity. We already know if they come out with a Steam Deck 2, that thing is going to be the shit. But in the event that they don't come out with a Steam Deck 2 for another 4 or 5 years, how the presence of a Nintendo Switch 2, which is going to be slightly more powerful than the Steam Deck, how that would aid the Steam Deck. Kind of like how it does with consoles. But before I do, if you like this intro music, definitely check out the Adrian Rockstar SoundCloud in the descriptions below. Now, let's get into the video. Now, we all know, like I was saying, Switch 2 is coming out. Devs will develop for the Switch 2. And the relationship between the Switch 2 and the Steam Deck could be something more akin to like a consoles, similar to like the PlayStation and the Xbox. For at least the past 2 generations, the current one, the PS5 and Xbox Series generations, as well as the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 generation, the consoles were relative in performance and relative in power. It's not like one was like demonstrably more powerful than the other. For the most part, they were roughly around the same when it came to power. The difference came in the optimization. Now, some devs optimize a little better for the Xbox. Other devs optimize a little better for the PlayStation. But for the most part, when you played on both systems, both consoles, the game was the performance was relative. The thing is, a lot of the times, if a dev developed and optimized for one console, a lot of the times they can just port that stuff to the other console because the work is done. Granted, they may need to do minor tweaks here and there to get it to work better or more efficiently. But for the most part, if they've optimized for the PlayStation, they would then just take that and kind of port it over to the Xbox and vice versa. I'm thinking we can probably get something like that for the Nintendo Switch too, where developers will optimize their games for the Nintendo Switch 2 to get it running, I don't know, maybe 1080p, 30 frames per second or something like that, and then take that, port it over to the Steam Deck, at least that preset, port that preset over to the Steam Deck, albeit at more of an 800p kind of setting, and use that optimization to have it be able to run at about 30 frames per second, albeit 800p frames on the Steam Deck. I think they can do that because at that point, the work is already done. The Steam Deck is growing in popularity. The Steam Deck is, out of the PC handhelds, is the most popular PC handhelds. And in fact, in terms of all of the handhelds that are out right now, outside of the Nintendo Switch 1 and what will be the Nintendo Switch 2, the Steam Deck is like the second to third most popular handheld that is currently out. I'm not going to say in history or how, I won't say that. But as of right now, it is outside of Nintendo Switch 2. It's the second most popular handheld. I mean, yeah, outside of Nintendo Switch 1, it's the second most popular handheld. And when the Nintendo Switch 2 comes out, obviously support for the Nintendo Switch 1 will die down. But At that point, the Steam Deck would probably be like the third most popular handheld, because I mean, you still have, you'll have the Switch 2, and then you'll have the Switch 1, which will still more than likely still get games. And there'll probably be some games that come out for Switch 2 that will also come out on Switch 1 as well. So yeah, at that point, I mean, Steam Deck will still be like the third most popular handheld out at this point in time. So it would make sense for developers to, you know, optimize their wealth, optimize the chances of their games being sold in different platforms. Because you have a lot of PC people players who would prefer to play their PC games on a handheld like a Steam Deck. So if they were to take the time to just take the optimization they've done on Nintendo Switch 2 and port that over the Steam Deck, I mean, that will increase the longevity of the Steam Deck tremendously. Now it's going to be up to Valve to reach out to these devs to do that. Like, these devs aren't always just going to do that. A lot of times they're crunched for time. Sometimes they might just be lazy. Sometimes they just, you know, don't feel the need to do it. But if Valve can get them and reach out to them and like, hey, can you put those presets on Steam Deck via some sort of update, man, it would make a tremendous difference. And they can do that. We've had developers optimize for the Steam Deck. Case in point, I'm gonna go to another person's video real quick and show you where he gives examples, at least 3 examples of when a game came out trash, and then a developer who cared about their product went back and made an update that optimized the game for the Steam Deck, and the performance is night and day difference. Night and day difference. Because the Steam Deck is a very capable handheld. It really is. Especially if developers show it a little love and optimize for it. So let's go to that video. So it's this guy, Sam Alexander. This is the only video I've seen from him, but based off this video is amazing. He really did this thing on this video. Based off this video alone, I would probably recommend him. But here it goes. The first one he talks about is Hogwarts Legacy. Let's listen.
Test out Hogwarts Legacy, which has been out for just over a year, which gives it a much better chance of actually being optimized. As much as I hate to say that this is the case, most games these days are released in an unfinished state, and then usually if you wait 6 months or a year, you're gonna have a whole lot better chance of getting a less buggy experience. Hogwarts,
which is absolutely right. These developers are just putting the games out and then they'll be like, I'll fix it later.
Legacy is an excellent example of this, where when it first came out, the Steam Deck experience was pretty bad. I tried it and it was pretty bad. But after a year of updates and improvements, the difference is huge. We're running at all low with balanced upscale and getting a pretty stable 50 to 70 FPS.
Which is crazy, because he said it himself. When Hogwarts Legacy came out, it ran terrible on the Steam Deck. Terrible on the Steam Deck. Now you're looking at it, granted it's at the low presets, but on a handheld, low presets still look fine. They look fine. It's definitely playable. And he's getting anywhere between 50 to 70 frames per second on a handheld, on a game that ran terribly, and a game that is fairly somewhat demanding. And that's all because the developers took the time to optimize their game or fix their game.
Which is awesome. In a game like this, which is more of a visual storytelling game than a twitchy shooter, I'd go for a target of 40 FPS, which, since we're getting over that, means we can turn up some of the settings and make it look a whole lot prettier.
Facts. If it's running anywhere between 50 to 70 frames per second on low presets, you can probably bump that up to medium or even high settings and get like a locked 30 frames per second. So you can actually make that look better and get 30 frames per second. Now, if you don't want to play 30 frames per second, you want the frames, you can do like what he says, lock it at 40 frames per second, and then maybe raise the presets up to about medium settings. So you'll still get a better visuals. You get like a really good medium ground. And that would be a nice preset for the developers to actually look for on this particular game. Maybe have like a Steam Deck presets where the settings are actually on medium, but it's a lock like 40 or 45 frames per second.
Here, I've actually put a ton of hours into Hogwarts.
All right, the next game he talks about is another really good example, and it's with Space Marines.
Add time. Next, let's try out Space Marine 2. This game is less than a year old, and they recently released an update that was supposed to dramatically improve performance on the Steam Deck specifically, so let's test it out. When the game was first released, I played it on the deck, and with everything as low as it would go, we were still getting like 10 to 25 FPS. But check this out. That update actually made a difference. In the same scene, we were getting the low 20s, and now we're getting in the high 20s, low 30s. That's a huge improvement considering it's on the exact same device and it's not using frame gen.
That is insane, dude. Like, what's up, Nuketown? That is insane. So basically, when he first got it, I don't have this game as of yet. I will get it eventually. But when he first got it and he played it on the Steam Deck, he's getting anywhere between 10 to 25 frames at the lowest presets. At the lowest presets, which is terrible. Granted, it is basically playable. It's borderline unplayable, honestly speaking. But they put the game out. It ran like trash on the Steam Deck. The developers cared about their game. They went in. They did optimizations to the game specifically for the Steam Deck so that it could run better on the Steam Deck. And they basically doubled the performance. That goes to show the importance of optimizations and optimizing on the Steam Deck. The amount of performance you can get out of a game if these developers would optimize their game for the Steam Deck is insane. And that's basically similar to that of the consoles. When the developers optimize the games for the consoles, it admittedly runs a lot better. It looks better. It runs better when they take the time to optimize their games for the consoles. And again, this is where the Switch 2 comes into play, because you can optimize the game for the Switch 2, port that over to like the Steam Deck, at least those presets, and make minor tweaks to those presets to make it run as good on the Steam Deck. I won't say it'll run better than Nintendo Switch 2, because Switch 2 will be slightly more powerful, but there'll be a lot of games that are coming out that will be able to run decently on the Steam Deck if the developers actually do that. They take that preset optimization that they do for the Nintendo Switch and port it over to the Steam Deck. And that will definitely just increase the longevity of the Steam Deck. And this is a perfect example. This developer put the game out, it ran like poopy on the Steam Deck, and they showed it some time, some love, and now the game runs phenomenally on the Steam Deck. You're talking
level with
40
40
frames per second.
We used to be getting in the low 20s, and now we're getting more like in the mid 40s. That's straight up double what it was on the exact same hardware. And again, we're not using any trickery. There is no frame gen here. And this is what I think.
No frame gen. And they doubled performance. Now, if you actually put frame gen on, you're looking at 60 frames per second. You're looking at 60 frames per second. That's assuming you can deal with like the lag input that comes with frame gen. But again, a game that was running between 10 and 25 frames per second with some optimization with frame gen, you can now get 60 frames per second. Without frame gens, you're looking at 30 to 40 frames per second. It's crazy how important optimization is. It really is.
Graphics power is important and it's useful and can get you through a lot of things. But optimization is what really does it, especially on handhelds where you're just not going to get that much raw graphics power. Before the update, Space Marine 2 was barely playable.
Look at this. Look at the difference.
It's a totally enjoyable experience. So at launch, I would have given Space Marine like a quarter of a star, maybe half.
Look at the difference. You're talking 10 to 15 to 20 frame difference on this game. And the visuals look as good. The visuals look the same almost. So like that's a massive difference. Now we're going to go into the next game.
Quotes. It was released in 2020, but it got a solid overhaul in 2022, and it's been getting DLC and is planned to keep getting DLC, so I would call it still a modern game. I'd also say that this has been one of the biggest games as far as graphics advancements, such as like ray tracing in recent history, so we gotta test it out. It does have a Steam Deck preset, which is mostly medium and high, and has balanced upscaling, and check this out. We're getting maybe high 30s to mid 40s FPS, which for how graphically demanding and how good this game looks, I'm starting to think I like Cyberpunk.
Dude, say less, bro. This is Cyberpunk. If you haven't played Cyberpunk is one of the most gorgeous games out. on PC and even on like console. It's one of the most beautifully optimized games and beautiful games, period. Beautiful game and very well optimized. Like CD Projekt Red took their time. Granted, this is another example. When they released this game, the game ran like trash. They was one of the developers. They threw out a game that was buggy and ran like trash, and then went ahead and fixed it later. And their fixes shows, like it shows the hard work that they put into optimizing this game, not just for consoles, because that's what they did. They optimized it for consoles like the PS4 and the Xbox as best as they could, and as well as like PS5 and series. But for PC, this game now is one of, if not the best looking game out. I won't say the best, but one of the most gorgeous looking games out, especially like open world games. And look for yourself. It's running anywhere between 35 to 45 frames on the Steam Deck, which is insane. And that's because they took the time to optimize it. They got a Steam Deck preset on the Steam Deck. And that's because the developer, CD Projekt Red, wanted this game to be able to run well on basically every system that's out for it. And it does. They took them time to, they could have just not thought about the Steam Deck at all and not did anything for it. Because I think when the game originally when the Steam Deck originally came out, it was running roughly around 30 frames per second. But due to the optimization that CD Projekt Red put into the Steam Deck preset, now it's running anywhere between 35 to 45 frames per second. They were able to add like another 10 frames and have the game still looking as good, if not better, than when it first launched on the Steam Deck. And that's the importance of optimization. Like it will make a world of difference if they could just optimize their games, take the time to optimize their games, or at the very least, any optimizations they do to the Nintendo Switch, port that over to the Steam Deck, so the Steam Deck users can keep enjoying these games, keep enjoying their games. It'll also give them more incentive to buy their games on PC and even the Steam Deck. So like for people who don't own a Nintendo Switch 2 or don't want to get a Nintendo Switch 2, but they still want to play their games on the go, get an optimization. Get some sort of optimization for it. Optimize it. And I'm sure optimizations like what we've seen on Space Marine and even Cyberpunk, that stuff transfers over to games like to PC handhelds like the Asus ROG and Legion Go and stuff like that. So that's all I wanted to talk about in this video, just optimization and how it will help the Steam Deck. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
To them young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you don't remember nothing else.